Hi, I'm Annalia, and welcome to Brightly Becoming, a podcast that gives you the space to slow down and come back to yourself. Here we talk through life in a grounded way, where conversations are held on identity, faith, and becoming who we're called to be. If you're in a clear season or an uncertain one, I'm glad you're here either way. It's time to come back to who you are underneath what you carry. Welcome to Brightly Becoming. We have the choice between staying in what we've known our whole lives or being the change and stepping into the inner freedom that lies in the unfamiliar. Let's talk about it. How many times have you spiraled over a situation only to realize that the worst case scenario your mind imagined to protect you never actually came true? Personally, I can recall several. The second something or someone unfamiliar comes into our life, we deem it as unsafe. But why? What if this opportunity, this next step, this person is part of the greatest thing that could happen to us? For some reason, we need everything to make sense. We need to know what we're doing or where we're going. And that's when we feel free, because all of a sudden we can breathe knowing we know exactly what comes next. But this is so limiting when we repeat things just because they're familiar. It's so easy to miss the blessings that are on the other side. You're repeating something not because it feels aligned, but it feels like something you can trust. And this is where God really tests our faith, right? The blessings he has for us usually come after the trials and the hardships and the moments when we just want nothing more than to give up. But when we try to figure out everything, our next steps before we move forward, we're holding ourselves back from receiving those blessings, clinging so desperately onto what feels familiar and safe to our nervous systems. But what if your freedom lied in the uncertain areas of your life? The places you haven't been, the people you haven't met, the state you'd never thought you'd move to. When you exit your comfort zone, you grow, but so does your faith, and it shows God that you're ready to trust him. Believe me, I'm working on this too. It feels easy some days, then impossible the next. I never realized how much of my life has been on autopilot, repeating my routine out of safety while shrinking my world. Stepping into the unknown is terrifying when our bodies were designed with brains that just want to keep us safe. So our brains come up with scenarios when we try to step out of our box. Like, what if we embarrass ourselves? What if this symptom I'm feeling is dangerous? What if I fail? Eventually you recognize this is just a part of you who is attaching this experience with a story this part of you told itself growing up. Our brains play this association game. We think of a place and suddenly feel our heart start to race. Our brains are so powerful. Something I've been trying to do is make new positive associations. And doing this feels weird. There is a little voice inside my head that says things like, "Are you sure? Is this safe?" And I know that's just the younger version of myself. But the thing is, you're exactly the person that younger you needed in this moment, even if some days you don't feel like it. If younger you could sit down right in front of you and you were face to face with them, I'm sure they would just be in awe of all that you are now, all that you've accomplished, all the people that love you and that you love, and your strength and your resilience. Having a relationship instead of pushing those parts of you away is so important. And this is something I've had to learn. I was not always the kindest to this younger version of me. I held so much resentment toward her. I was angry with her for putting these stories in my head that I know now at 23 years old are so far from the truth. But now I get to tell younger me, I can take care of us now. You don't need to worry anymore. And the biggest change of all is having God at the center of my life. I've realized I don't have to walk into unfamiliar situations and feelings and places alone. God is the one who grabs my hand and he walks with me. He lights my path. Think of how many things used to be unfamiliar to you, but now are a huge part of your life. Look at the people you surround yourselves with. They were once strangers to you. They probably once felt unsafe. You didn't trust them, and they've become such a big part of who you are. When I think about how many things used to be unfamiliar to me, how many people used to be unfamiliar to me, the story of how I met my boyfriend comes to mind. And maybe I'll make a separate episode all about God's timing and the waiting season. But if I would have never given him a chance after previous relationships that left me heartbroken, I would have never gotten to experience what it feels like to be loved this way, to feel seen and understood, and so much more. Is it possible for unfamiliar things to just be seen as new instead of unsafe or scary? Why do we immediately say things like, I've never felt this before, this is scary, instead of, I've never felt this before, this is exciting? I spent so much of my life trying to get back to familiar things only to realize I've outgrown them, and I'm not looking that way anymore. God is leading me forward. What if unfamiliar is just a space where you're becoming something different? And our first instinct for some reason is just to fix, to figure it out, to define it, to make it make sense and as quickly as possible. I'm learning though that this isn't always necessary, and God will always handle it. He will always take care of it. Now I find myself saying things like, what if I just allow this to be new? Even if it feels a little uncomfortable, even if I don't fully trust it yet, because I think we underestimate how quickly we go back to old patterns just because they feel known, not because they're better, not because they're more aligned, just because they're familiar. And I'm starting to see that the unfamiliar, even though it feels uncertain, is actually where I have more choice. I'm not reacting the way I always have. I'm deciding, even if it's slower, even if I'm second guessing myself a little bit. I think that's where the freedom is. Not in having everything figured out in my life, not in feeling completely certain, but I'm realizing I don't have to keep doing things the way I've always done them. I don't have to remain the person I've always been. I'm allowed to grow. And I think that's really uncomfortable at first because you don't have a blueprint. You don't have a pattern to follow. We're just told to trust God. And how hard does that feel though sometimes, right? You don't know your next step and you start to panic. But not knowing your next step, there's something so freeing about that. There are so many possibilities that lie ahead of us. It means that we're not stuck. So if you're in a season right now where things feel unfamiliar, where you don't fully feel like your old self anymore, but you also don't feel fully settled into who you're becoming, I don't think that means you're lost. I think it just means you're in a space where things are shifting. Maybe that's where your freedom lies, not in rushing through it, not in trying to make it feel comfortable as quickly as possible, but just letting it be what it is, even if it feels unfamiliar. Thank you for being here. I hope this felt like a space where you could just slow down for a second and feel present. Wherever you are right now, you're allowed to be there. You aren't behind. You are becoming. Talk to you soon.